Ready? All right, we are ready. Welcome everybody to the Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 meeting. Capital Region Transportation Council Planning Committee. No visitor issues, right? Nobody signed up. So introduction, I'm Steve Pini, Schenectady County.
Greg, what's your region one DOT?
Chris Bond, City of Schenectady.
Paige Berryman, Saratoga Springs, Lisa Ramondo, Albany County.
John Scavo, Town of Clifton Park.
Jim Lambert, Saratoga County. Karen Ward, Transportation Council.
Andrew Prushick, City of Troy.
Mark Castiglione, Regional Planning Commission.
Patrick Jordan, Port of Albany.
Sandy Misowitz, Regional I can't speak today. Capital Region Transportation Council.
Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council.
Jacob Beeman, Transportation Council.
Nicole McGrath, the Fish WA.
Unsafe bus down at Gilroy.
Randy Milano, DOT Region 1. Mark Sargent, Creighton Manning.
Jesse Vogel, LaBella.
And I'll read the folks that are listening remotely or virtually. Ryan Simon from the Transportation Council, Ayla Shermer from Federal Transit Administration, Bob Rice, welcome from Creighton Manning. Chris Bauer from the Capital Region Transportation Council, Connor Haskins from the Airport Authority, Emily Laughlin from CTA, Greg B. If you could put your affiliation in the chat, that would be great. Jamie O'Neill, Town of Malta, Joe Semino, CHA, Mike Williams, CBTA, Peter Comenzo, Town of Rotterdam, Rob Leslie, Town of Bethlehem, and Teresa LaSalle from the Transportation Council. And Chris Kate from McFarland Johnson. Should be everybody online.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. First item today, I believe we have a presentation, Town of Brunswick, Hoosick Road Corridor Study. Here, introduce.
Yeah, so this is one of our linkage studies. Andrew Tracy was our project manager. Creighton Manning performed the project, so we thought this was a tricky one. Put it that way. But I think it's a good one for you folks to hear a presentation on. So I'll turn it over to Mark Sargent, who's going to give you the presentation today.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So we put this in PowerPoint slide mode. And we'll go through it. The next slide, please. The study area for this linkage study is in the town of Brunswick, just northeast of Troy. And it's a section of Hoosick Road extending from Lake Avenue out to New York Route 42, a distance of about 2.5 miles. That Route 42 intersection is where there's the Stewarts. It's also called the Sweet Milk Creek Road, is that little local street that heads off there. So it focused on that section of Hoosick Road, Route 7, and also the adjacent neighborhoods. Keep going, Sandy.
Sorry about that.
So here's a photo from the middle part of the corridor, and this is the signal at the where the recent Hannaford was built and the Aldi's, and you can see the line of traffic heading really eastbound there or northbound. And that was a big part of the study, was to try to address traffic congestion in the corridor. This slide shows the tasks that are normally completed as part of the linkage study. Go ahead. And the purpose is really to reduce congestion to the extent we can in a corridor that's constrained like this, and widening is really not an option. Improve safety and improve multimodal mobility. Just going to spend a minute on this slide. It shows daily traffic volumes in the corridor and really points to the main problem or challenge of this study. And the blue bars on the left represent typical weekday daily traffic volumes. And the left side of the chart shows total daily traffic, generally west of Hillcrest Avenue, which is near that Hannaford and Aldi's intersection. And you can see daily traffic volumes over 25,000 cars a day in a 3-lane section. And many of you know that's well over what a 3-lane roadway can typically handle and still operate well. So that in essence is the challenge of this study. As you move further to the east, volumes do drop closer to 20,000 vehicles per day, up to about the Walmart, and then beyond that, closer to 15,000 vehicles per day. This corridor is not reliable, and it's one of the least reliable corridors in the capital region, as shown by this chart. You could travel through there anytime from about noon until 6 or 7 p.m. and experience traffic congestion. Long delays, particularly on the weekends, Friday outbound, Sunday inbound, and really any weekday. We travel to committee meetings out there at noon or 1 or 2 o'clock, and it might take 10 minutes to get through the first mile of the corridor. So a lot of recurring congestion. We were very successful at the online public involvement. You can see in the upper left, we had over 10,000 people. Over 1,000 people engaged with the online survey. And the overwhelming majority were concerned with traffic congestion. All of the other things fell to the bottom of the list. People want to be able to get through there better than they do today. We looked at a number of roadway improvements, and it was established early in the study that roadway widening is off the table. It's not consistent with regional practice and funding policies, but it was the elephant in the room, and we knew we needed to address it in some regard. So the study did look at that a little bit and at least explain it as part of the public involvement process, why widening was not appropriate here. And then we focused on the other 5 bullets that you see there: spot improvements, what can we do with signal timing, and some of the other things. Sandy? This is a slide that we used when engaging with the public, just to explain the history of roadway widening. It was studied in detail roughly 20 or 25 years ago, when the current configuration of 3-lane roadway was constructed. 5-lane section was evaluated at that time, and it was determined that there would be 170 property impacts, 27 buildings would be impacted. It was a significant impact, and a decision was made at that time to move forward with the 3-lane section. And that just helped inform the kind of why we are where we are today. And also, we all know that you can't really build your way out of congestion, and use that as a way to inform the public of the challenges of this corridor. Sandy? We did introduce this idea of what we call the 1-1-2, a 1-lane inbound, 2 lanes outbound toward Vermont direction, to see if this could have any advantage. It had certainly had fewer property impacts, but still probably not practical. And it had a small travel time benefit. And so it didn't go very far, but it would be similar to the section of Fuller Road here locally, where you have, as it's shown, 1 lane in one direction and 2 outbound. So the study focused on a number of spot improvements to see where we could eke out any operational benefit, and I'll walk through those quickly. First one on the left, next slide, Sandy. There's a possibility of a roundabout at Lord Avenue. This would be an extreme challenge, to say the least. There's a significant embankment going down to a stormwater area, and then kind of the upper left portion of that circle would have to be a 2-lane roundabout, would involve property. We questioned the practicality of this, honestly, but needed to evaluate it as far as we could with this study. It would have a significant travel time benefit. It turned out that this particular intersection is really the main problem in the corridor. We had a lot of public outreach, and people would say the corridor was bad before the Aldi signal, and now it's horrible now. We used to be able to drive, it used to be bad in one direction outbound, now it's bad in both directions. And so it appears that something could be done here at the Lord Avenue intersection. It would address some of those concerns.
That's the Hannaford.
This is the Hannaford intersection. We just questioned whether a roundabout is really practical here, and there's language in the study that says it speaks to that. Sandy? One that's more practical here is to extend this right turn lane into the Price Chopper Plaza and turn it into a through lane, take away that bump out on the far side where the additional through lane already develops. It's a small improvement, would provide a small benefit. The town has already acquired some right of way along that frontage. Next slide, Sandy. And you'll see what that would look like. So a spot improvement that is feasible and practical and has a small benefit. Would also involve relocating a bus stop. Sandy? This is an improvement that I personally like. It's out on the east end of the corridor at the New York 142 intersection. You can see there's a travel time savings associated with the roundabout concept. It's also a safety benefit, as we know, with roundabout concepts. This intersection on Sundays can back up 3/4 of a mile or a mile to the Harley Davidson and further out as people coming back into the corridor. This would be a nice gateway kind of improvement and would be a good project. The other thing we looked at is traffic signals. What could be done with the signals? They're not currently coordinated, at least all of them. Some of them are. This new signal in the middle is not part of that system. We evaluated coordinated and adaptive and had a KRF on our team for the adaptive piece. Go ahead, Sandy. This shows the difference between conventional and adaptive. And if you look at the two rightmost bars, really the red and the green, it shows nominally a little bit of difference between conventional coordination and adaptive traffic signal control. And in reality, I think this is just noise between the two models. Because we know that adaptive does not work well in corridors that operate over capacity, because you just can't buy any benefit with an adaptive system. So the conclusion of this is to pursue the conventional signal coordination. It will provide some travel time benefit. Go ahead, Sandy. We also looked at transit, possibility of relocating some bus stops to place them closer to where we have safe crossings, shown by the yellow dots there. Go ahead. And that's summarized here. Eliminating a couple of lower volume bus stops. Go ahead, Sandy. The study also evaluated connections outside the study area, and CRTC actually modeled these connections. Go ahead, Sandy. Showed that, obviously we know as transportation professionals, connections like this are good. It establishes some sort of grid network, gives people options to travel outside the corridor. It would move something like 3 to 4% of the traffic away from Route 7. The challenge is the neighborhoods don't want additional cut through traffic. I'm sure you've all had those conversations with locals about that. So how do you really implement these things? But there are some what we would call higher priority connections that are in the report that we would encourage the town to pursue over time to alleviate some of the congestion on Route 7 and give people options to travel outside the corridor. We looked at pedestrian accommodations, particularly on the section of McChesney Avenue. You can see the little white dots in the middle of the screen. There's a lot of higher density apartment buildings there. People get home, they want to walk, run, take their dog out. And there are no good accommodations to do that on these roadways, these local roadways. So pursuing either wider shoulders or a path along McChesney Avenue is part of the study. Go ahead. Access management and land use within this study was approached more from a policy standpoint. We had a couple of site-specific access management recommendations that didn't go too far. And there's language in the report that the town should really take this to heart as they continue to, evaluate applications within the corridor, both on the land use side and access management side. Traffic calming was explored because, again, people at the meetings talked about concerns with cut-through traffic in their neighborhoods, people speeding in their neighborhoods. So there are a number of things that can be done to ameliorate that, and so traffic calming is part of the study. Go ahead, Sandy. And there was support for that. The last one here, I don't know if it's actually the last one, but this came out of the public involvement. There's a little bit of a crash history looking at this intersection. It's on the east end of the intersection, east end of the corridor. You can see the embankment, a little bit hard to see there. Short-term measures to improve the conspicuity of the warning signs for that intersection. A longer term, see what else can be done. like regrading the slope. Go ahead, Sandy. It's all summarized in the report, which is on CRTC's website at this time, with an indexed map and discussion of all of these concepts. Go ahead, Sandy. And we went back to the public a second time. We asked people what they liked or didn't like about the improvements. And by the green bars, you can see people really like all of these concepts. And again, the traffic signal optimization in the middle rises to the top. It's an easy, relatively straightforward improvement that will provide some travel time benefit in the corridor. Last slide, Sandy. And we asked people of all of the recommendations, which were most important to them, or what would they prioritize? And people did like, they did want to see that eastbound travel lane, although that's certainly not a short-term option. In the middle, again, you can see the signal operations as being important. The Lord Avenue roundabout, all three of those would move traffic through the area a little better. We think there's some really good projects here that the town can pursue going forward. And so with that, we'll take any questions.
Is the eastbound travel lane the widening though?
Yes, it would be a smaller widening.
Is it the one you were showing where you would just do that little bit?
Yes, and so in concept, that widening wouldn't even have to be the width of a full travel lane. Because there are like 13 and 14 foot wide travel lanes out there today, and you could go with a narrower lane and, you know, try to minimize impacts.
In the town, is the road in the town, so the state owns it?
It's state highway.
Okay, all right, it's not in Troy. If it was in Troy, your road.
Now this is.
I know, I've been there, I believe, just like you said.
If it was in Troy, you'd have 4 lanes logically to get through the amount of buildings that the town has let them put up.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask too. I know that it's stuff the city doesn't much part of it. I thought like, you know, mitigation, was there not mitigation done by the town when all this development was going on? Is that not something that the state requires when it comes to the route?
It's a challenging corridor, like Sandy said at the beginning. There has been a lot of development approved in the corridor. And the cumulative effect of that is what you see out there, that recurring congestion. There are small mitigation that happens along the way, turn prohibitions at certain driveways, right turn lanes at certain driveways, the additional through lane at McChesney, and at the Walmart. So there are small mitigations happening at the project level, but cumulatively, it just hasn't kept pace with the needs.
Well, that's just interesting that they liked everything except for slowing down.
Yeah.
I was
People
gonna,
want to move through the area.
no, I was gonna ask that, I'm sorry, you guys might have different answers, because this is your livelihood. How does slowing down help?
Uh,
How would that stop traffic? How
I
does-
think that was with regard to a speed limit reduction on the east end of the corridor. So it transitions from, you know, low speed congested to maybe 40 miles an hour in the easterly section. And there was a discussion about trying to calm that section, and people just want to sail through there. Generally, we also did an OD study, and it shows about a third of the traffic outbound is traveling all the way through. 2/3 pulls off to the neighborhoods
That was my question.
or stores.
As far as seasonality goes, because that's your gateway to Vermont in the winter, summer, you know. Did you find much variation in the totals of vehicular volumes going in certain directions, time of year?
Yeah, tough. We did look at it, Andrew. I don't remember the details of it. I know we had some seasonal data. And I just don't remember the details.
Trucks, I would think there'd be a lot of trucks.
There are a lot
There
of,
are a lot of trucks. There's a lot of.
As you say, that's the problem with this. It's not only a commercial corridor, but it's
It's every
capital region of Vermont.
Yeah.
So I would think the trucks would be just high.
It seems like a lot of through traffic there. Is a third a lot when you look at roads like this? It always seemed to me that that's. I know there's been development along the corridor, but if you look at the aerial photo, it's not like the highest density. You know, area. It just seemed to me that a lot of the traffic, is a third of the traffic considered high, or is that just?
I don't know. I don't know. What's your thought on that.
I'd actually say it's a
Little low.
low, well, I would assure you it used to be higher, a higher percentage. Until this developed and became more of a destination that people were going to, it's, you know. And the mitigation is always a challenging thing. For DOT, you know, can't enforce it, it's each individual application comes and it's like it's the accumulations of each one is a minimal effect, but the accumulation is
The cumulative is what's been.
Did you model any
It's
of the
ultimate.
improvements? Like if we do
We
all
did.
these improvements, it's gonna,
We did.
people are gonna save 20 seconds. Or people are gonna say, I mean, is it really like,
Good point. I didn't make that point, but there was a travel time slide, and I said there was noise in the model with regard to whether conventional or adaptive signal would perform better. What that slide also showed is that there will be additional degradation of travel time over time with like the ChickfilA and a few other developments that are on the table out there. And it'll, instead of taking 12 minutes to travel through the corridor, it's gonna take 14 or 15 minutes to travel 2.5 miles. And if you can get the coordination in there and a couple of these spot improvements, travel time will come back down to where it is today. So it's not very good, but at least it isn't further deterioration.
With the ultimate, and this is something that we look further down on, who's it, I mean, it's getting to a point where the ultimate conclusion is the only solution is a bypass. Are
Yeah, it's a
they,
regional,
they-
that's a
they look at the
bigger discussion.
area to the west of Hoosick Road and say, well, if worst comes to worst, we can
Yeah.
route traffic completely around a commercial district.
Yeah.
But,
and
I would
bypassing,
say-
if a third is not considered high,
right,
you're gonna build a bypass when a third, you know,
well, it would
they're
have to
not
be in
even considered high
conjunction
for like
with Troy.
that type of travel. I mean,
It bypasses, the answer clearly, because it's only 1/3 of traffic,
yeah,
bypasses aren't. Yeah, I mean. Look to our friends that are east in Vermont, you know, bypass did not do that area well. And that was, at the time, an incredibly expensive bypass. The year $2,000.
And the businesses don't like it after you put it in, because you just took huge percentages like Boston Lake.
Yeah.
Restaurants literally went out of business 2 years after the bypass went in. Right.
I like the roundabout at Route 142 because coming from Saratoga County, it's kind of a bypass now to bypass downtown Troy and that part of Hoosick Street. You can come in at 142, so I think that would encourage that route
Could be
to,
a good standalone project.
yeah, take additional traffic because it should be more efficient.
3 or 4?
4. Yeah.
Is there a safe, I mean, I don't have the research to go in every angle. Is there a safety issue at 142 at all, even because that's a wacky intersection? So,
Yes, it is a little wacky. I don't recall. We did the crash analysis. I think what I do remember is it showed concentration of crashes in the west end of the corridor, congested end. At that specific intersection, I don't remember.
I'm just curious.
That was a student's. So
If this were to go forward as a TIP project, it's a state TIP project, it's not as the town.
The town can happily apply for any of the improvements they'd like to see to reimagine their vision.
sounds like no matter what you do, you're not gonna make a dramatic change.
Probably not without a widening. And you could see that first slide, how people just want to be able to get through the corridor a little better.
and why didn't all you want it? Because we're constricted as soon as they come into the city, Detroit. Because we can't build out, everything's compressed into the width that exists there now.
Is this area similar to like 30A where you have businesses up on the hill outside of Amsterdam and Amsterdam where is that what, so people are coming from Troy, I mean, is there like an origin destination, most of the people from Troy coming in and back and forth, that's the trips? If they're not going
Yes.
through, then that's what it is, it's just back and forth.
Yes, that is a
Yeah,
path.
it's a mix.
Because to Steve's point, there's not a lot of density once you look at that aerial, I mean, it's not urban, it's getting there.
Right, it's a concentration of all the shopping.
Yeah.
It's a complex story, that quarter, as you all know, because part of why it's evolved into what it evolved to begins with the construction of 787 and Route 7. right? So it's the chicken and the egg thing, right? And I think one of the things we can do in the longer term is take some lessons learned from what's happened in this area from the perspective of both land use and transportation. Because there's some choices that have been made over the years that have completely restricted and kind of tied the hands of all of us in terms of what we can even do there because of how it built out. So, you know, that's why the land use planning piece has to be a part of the conversation when we talk about transportation. That's why I emphasize it so much as part of our long-term plan. You know, there are some things that communities can be doing to do better. And we could provide tools and the resources to help support that. But when you get to the point that this particular quarter is, you know, to try to take 120 homes. Or properties
on that.
anyway,
I never-
you know, you're talking, that's something that's so politically challenging that I just don't know that anybody would have. The ability to even think about something like that, so.
The 112 could be done without, it appears it could be done without taking any structures, so we strip taking. And I will say that, because it was Wayne Bonesteel, who's the town engineer, was on the committee. And he was helpful in kind of messaging the importance of the land use side of the discussion with the town. So he was, that was part of the study, you know, that they have a responsibility on their end to review the project as it comes through and understand the consequences of the decisions that they make, because DOT isn't gonna come through here and widen the road. And there are certain things the town can do, and that is in the report. And so that it was a challenging study. Yeah. The elephant in the room is widening.
And in the internal circulation, I know there's lots, some of it, but that all improves, so you don't have to go out and back to.
Yeah.
Go down the road to your next stop.
100%. So the challenge, I think, you know, is those individual conversations. Because landowners either don't want to connect, or grades don't match up, or developers don't want somebody passing through. And so when we have those meetings on specific connections, it's really hard to get them. And so, yes, in concept, we talked about those, and we carried it further to some specific sites, and we got pushback. Because if it's to a neighborhood, the neighborhood doesn't want the connection. If it's to an adjacent business, the developer's like, I don't want those guys coming through my property. And so, as professionals, yes, we know, we want to pursue those kinds of connections, and when you can make them happen. In reality, it's extremely difficult.
Sandy, is the planning committee as a whole or the area, do we have areas that are identified in one of our documents, like envisions that are infant Hoosick streets? Where we're monitoring or reaching out to people for planning purposes, like saying that we're taking everything we learned on the Hoosick Street, and we're working with a Half Moon or Saratoga, anyone to make sure we don't have that, or is. I didn't know.
There's lots of examples where we have corridors, and some of which are not state highways too, they're county roads. That have similar things occurring to the extent we can. You know, we try to engage with them, and, you know, I've done linkage studies on some of them. We hear a lot about Route 67 and Saratoga County, we hear a lot about certain roads. The congestion management process at least identify the corridors that we have known traffic congestion problems on today, so that helps to fine tune it. And I think as we get more into assessing, and Andrew's gonna talk about something a little later, at least from a technical point of view, what we can do in terms of offering some help, but on the land use side, that's the tricky part, you know, and that's why we, you know, try to build as many tools and resources as we can. We have the community planner forum. A lot of these towns don't even have a full-time planner. That makes it very challenging, Brunswick being one of them. So who is making decisions, who is involved in policy making there, the comprehensive plans may be dated. There's a lot of pieces, right? And it is a challenge. It's one you know, Mark's organization too, you guys are, you know, have these conversations with communities all the time, I'm sure, and, you know, we just keep trying our best to give as much information, but ultimately, you know, the decision makers make the decisions they make. And we just try to provide as much information we can, and I think that's one of the themes that our new regional plan is going to have. Is more language to speak to the language side of the equation, because we are at a tipping point in some areas for sure.
It was interesting to hear that ChickfilA is coming to this corridor. You're just going, oh, so you're here and then you're adding.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
you know, it's
Well, they come-
interesting.
And they come because they see a traffic volume number and they said, that's where we wanna be, and this is like also the business cycle, right?
Well, the traffic study's gonna say Chick-fil-A doesn't generate any, they're just taking advantage of the traffic that's already
That's
there.
funny. Right.
Right? I don't wanna point to Creighton, maybe they're doing the study. and
No,
they're
no.
like, Chick-fil-A's not gonna have any impact because we don't generate traffic, we just take advantage of the traffic. So I mean, at some point, it's like, yeah, you generate the congestion,
They're their own category now.
you know?
Yeah, they're special, they're definitely special.
But it's becoming that corridor,
All right,
not a standalone destination, there's plenty of other things drawing. So I mean, their argument is pseudo valid.
Whatever, you hear that argument constantly, maybe it's true for some uses.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving to administration, previous meeting minutes, May 1, 2024. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion, Kim.
Can I have a second? Yeah. Second. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries, thank you. Tip fiscal constraint summary table, Jacob, our favorite item.
So we are still within our 5% over programming that we typically try to abide by for each year. We are slightly under programmed for federal highway fund sources for the 4-year period. So we're in good shape. I see, so Sandy's got some arrows there, even though we are under programmed as a whole right now. If we look at it fund source specific, we are over programmed by about $3 million for NHPP. Over programmed for SDP urban by about $6 million, and then under programmed for flex by about 6 million, and under programmed for carbon reduction program funding by about 4 million. So even though we're under overall, we do have some individual over programming for individual fund sources that we, you know, should keep an eye on. That's it.
Thank you, Jacob. 2023-24 UPWP closeout revision, we have a revision.
Yeah, this is just a minor cleanup of our books from the prior fiscal year. As part of that process, we have to officially amend our UPWP for 2023-24. So basically, in summary, we readjusted some of the budget and moved funding from one category to another to balance out the books. We overspent on some of the categories and sort of underspent in some of the other categories, and it's really just a rebalancing act, but it does require your concurrence. Most of the rebalancing is typical for what you would see in an NPO this size, so nothing to be concerned about. But if you have any specific questions, let me know.
So we need a motion.
We need a motion.
So we have a motion. Thank you, Andrew. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed and abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Action items. Tip amendments, amendment 1. It's gonna be the DOT, correct? Block of funds for NISDOC curb line sign upgrade.
Yes, so in the, looking around to how to continue to spend HSIP funds statewide and identify areas that are sort of low hanging fruit and easy to get after. We've discovered our curve warning signs around the state are not MUTCD compliant from not even the current one, but one prior. So this is given as part of a roadway departure plan we're creating. You update all the curve warning signs around the region, using statewide provided HSIP. So this is to put this sort of block multi-site project on the respective tips around the state. So here we are with the approximations of how much we'll spend here. The plan is to let a project for Albany and Rensselaer counties. And then follow that with a project to hit Saratoga and Schenectady counties. All in all, the total project will shoot for about $7.5 million to implement this initiative.
Wow. Signs.
A lot of signs, a lot of curves.
Money and signs, huh?
Lot of curves.
Greg, are these
These are-
different looking signs or moving them back?
Larger spacing changes, closer spacing, you know, they're usually behind guide rail curves. So it's currently the spacing and the size are deficient, so now they'll be, of course, newly reflective, so they'll be better at night, bigger and closer and so it adds up. And again, this is from a statewide pot, so this doesn't hit the core.
Does the DOT GIS locate their signs like some other counties do, or do you actually have a sign inventory?
I know some counties have a really good inventory. I don't know if it's GIS entirely, but it's definitely they know how many on each road.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think it was Saratoga County, Schenectady County's got it, I think, Steve, but on the back of the sign is actually a barcode. Scan and locate it on there, so I didn't know if you knew how many, it says a lot of signs, so $7.5 million worth of
I,
curves out.
yeah, I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's like, I forget how many hundreds of curves they have to go.
Are you putting them, or are you gonna contract that with?
I think contract out.
Yeah.
We don't have the resources, so it'd be a lot less.
Seems the spacing is a big issue. I mean, looking at some of the new applications, like in Schenectady, when you're getting on the highway where the toll booth used to be, there's like 100 of them now, just to take care of the curves that.
I'm scraping on
Yeah,
this little
Jersey.
areas.
Are still. or not, things are happening. But the visibility, it's almost like when you're passing by, it's a continuous signage because of the proximity of their location.
We could drive a road done many years ago and they're like much further apart.
Oh, yeah.
It's- That's the initiative here, so,
Greg, the federal NHTC is what's being used to guide this project, or
yes.
the older state one,
It'll follow the new,
the new federal one?
this particular standard, I don't believe change or change much, but of course, we're gonna use the new one as this rolls out
Okay.
to the field.
Is there a supplement here?
No. They're working feverishly to develop the New York something.
Will that really affect on the signage?
I doubt it, but I'm not the expert on that.
And how much ACID money do we have?
In this,
What's in this pot that I'm not aware of?
this is a state.
The magical pot that's taken off the top?
Yeah.
We'd all like to know that.
Statewide, currently statewide, we do not obligate all the HSIP in the state annually. So through these initiatives, we're trying to find ways to accelerate the spending of HSIP, which will be a conversation later on another tip amendment about why we're able to add even local HSIP to the pot. So, yeah, we're good at spending HSIP at this table. We're good at collectively identifying problems and spending it, but there are other regions that are not as good, being lower volumes, they don't identify the crash patterns as easily, and it's a challenge, and the more rural you get, it's harder to justify.
Unfortunately, Chris, and with all due respect to Greg, these are conversations that no longer happen at this table. They're just brought to us. We're not, as the MPOs, we're not really involved in these conversations.
No, I just, it's one of those that you bring something to the table, but it's not discussed around or known at the table, so it's like,
Right.
for.
It's-
Roundabout,
it's-
you know, it's like, there's
it's
other
a-
things that might be welcome to spend with HSIP money, but.
It's been
signage-
discussed amongst all the MPOs in the state, this issue, and it's a challenge.
Get some signs.
And I'm assuming it's eligible because it's not like it's HIP crash stuff, like, oh, if you replace this sign, you have to have crashes at this curve. If you don't have crashes, you can still replace the sign, because it's the old HIP, you know, like we can't, we're handcuffed on HIP because you might have a lot of accidents, but it's not, you know, meeting it's an average.
We're trying to
You know?
get, we're trying to capture more systemic HSIP items and grow the toolbox in the preventive category. Because until, I'll say, recent years, HSIP was always a reactive fund source. You had to identify a crash pattern, which means you're waiting for crashes to happen. document the crashes, figure out the benefit, and then you can fix it. We're pivoting now to preventive measures. The PSAP program several years ago was the first of those.
So for a project to be HSAP eligible, you don't have to meet the crash data.
Correct, for systemic approved features. This is a new systemically
Like
approved
it's sign.
science. PSAP is systemically approved. All those treatments can qualify for HSAP if anyone identifies, because a topic I'll bring up later.
Okay.
But,
All right,
so yeah,
so
it's, we're trying to make it easier to
I
spend.
think we beat, Greg's signs.
Item, if I can, Steve, one, just
Can
one.
we get a mo,
So if it's no longer systemic, are there elements which are itemized to be considered for, say, applicability of HSIP money? So if there's a grade change or a curve radius that exists that you can argue has the potential for, you know, a tragic event, would the funds then be allowed to be used for a project to mitigate the potential rather than having the facts that support it?
Things such as that aren't in the systemic toolbox yet, but
Is it moving that way? You think?
we're expanding the toolbox. There doesn't feels like a push from federal highway to get preventive and reactive, not just reactive.
And that's part of what our SS4A, the Regional Vision Zero Safety Plan and Development is going to hopefully identify are some systemic pre-approved project types, if you will, that can be eligible for HSIP and other fund sources. So
Thank you.
definitely moving in that direction.
all right. So we need a motion, right? So a motion, for NISDOT's amendment regarding the sign installations. See a motion.
Lisa?
Do I have a second?
Like a second, Steve.
All those in favor, aye? Opposed, abstained, motion carried. Action item 2, another DOT amendment, Route 146, right?
Yes.
Skills and go around.
So Route 146 over the line skill, yeah, not thank you, I can't read today, Norman skill. It has been in design for a while, and through the efforts and outreach, and our friends in Gilberlin quickly reached out about a planned multi-use path in this corridor. So through the development, we're modifying the scope to include a multi-use path on the bridge and to the logical termini of winter recreation area and how it's central park. Right? And so this is to add funds and scope to include this path. And of course, incorporate some identified inflation as we are hearing the final plans and estimate. So this is to fully fund the final estimate and new scope of the project. Any questions on that?
Multi-use path is 3 million plus.
No, the inflation and the path are 3 million plus. The paths, I don't know exactly, probably 1.5 million to 2 of it. So.
It's an HPP.
How long does it extend?
What would you say, down about 500 feet to the south and then 500 feet to Towel Center Park. It's maybe 1,000 feet of path. Yeah, so and then of course the bridge itself had to be modified to accommodate.
Steve, what's the winter recreation there? What was it?
That's well, it's used in the summer too. It's part of the park. There's trails and but they call it winter recreation. It's where they do the sledding and
It's in that park?
it's on your way towards Keenholz as you pass Tel Santa. It's on the same side of the road.
It's like the same distance past
That's
the
where the
bridge.
mud races are and all the good stuff.
It's about the same distance from the bridge as Towel Center.
Yeah. It's across from the town's other parkland. I believe the town and the Don can answer this. If do we have an application pending to continue the path to Western Avenue from Town Center? Is that,
They have funding from a
did we
non-federal
get
source.
that funding? Did we get that? Did you get that one?
Nope.
Didn't get, oh, okay.
Oh, we got the other. That's been sitting there for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Look at it.
okay, yeah, so sticking to, there's another section of this that's gonna be completed with another project.
All the way to Western.
Oh, yeah,
That's-
that's significant.
So this is just another top, so that's not.
No, this is regional, this is regional core for. Oh, industrial.
No, it's,
And this is-
it's your special money.
I forgot this, I forgot this project, this one under off. Yeah, I can't keep track of which projects we got from the main office, yeah. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion?
3 million just for the path?
No.
No, about $1.5 million to two,
But what's inflation?
then inflation's the rest of it.
Inflation for the bridge.
Okay, then inflation on just the path, okay.
Yeah, no, inflation for the bridge, the original bridge.
Okay, all right.
The bridge is the big nut.
Yeah,
Those MPO meetings, where the DOT's not there, Sandy, those must be amazing.
They are entertaining. Nicole can vouch for that.
All right.
All right,
Motion.
any further, I mean, motion, Andrew, do I have a second?
I'll second, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks. Any further discussion? Roll call, all those in favor, aye. Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion carries, thank you. Amendment 3, Riverview Road over I-87 bridge replacement. Greg again.
yeah, so a few years ago, when Sitterly Road was hit, our structures engineer said, well, now that that's out of the way, Riverview is the next airport low bridge, i.e. not 16 feet, it's at 14 and change. That is at, like, we'll call it at risk, it's like the last bridge, less than 16 feet for, I believe, from the thruway till Essex County. So unfortunately, this was struck and damaged, it's now closed. But when we put this in the 5th year of the tip, to start progressing design to hopefully get it out of the way. Unfortunately, it was struck, so we're proposing to advance this from the 5th year into the current tip to accelerate a replacement. So that's the idea that needs planning and policy, because moving it from the 5th year is technically unfunded. So bringing it into the 4 years. And we've also updated the original estimate again, last tip was done, we've seen inflation. So this represents the current high level estimate of the replacement of this bridge. It's, the fiscal constraint impact is a interesting conversation that'll continue to the next tip update. But the long and the short is, between regional moving of money and again, the statewide folks that aren't always spending their fund source, we're able to add some planning target to maintain the fiscal constraint balance at the table. So it's a interesting times with the ability to do something like this. So that's the situation we're in right now. So we're hoping to,
So we increase our overall,
NHP planning target. So we're,
so there's no impact on
We're gonna
fiscally
So
constrained.
going back to the table we saw at the beginning, we'll be increasing the target value based on this action today. But it comes back to that other conversation that, you know, the MPOs are just not part of these statewide decisions and, you know, it's, we're benefiting in a way. I mean, there's a positive to this. Other projects are not moving forward statewide, so we're able to grab some of these funds, but there's a lot of funds taken off the top now that are just not programmed through the MPOs anymore. And it just sort of appeared.
and this is a strange one where we're allowed to add it. And then theoretically, it comes off the later years, but I'll dare say it. I don't know how to say this. There's a very complex set of accounting in the background that, as much as we're.
Series of twos.
Yeah. And long and the short is this shouldn't have an impact on the upcoming tip update, even though we're adding planning target today.
So there's more federal aid out there than we knew, or they're taking projects that aren't getting done in other parts of the state and we have this money available.
It's more of a collective of around the state
not getting stuff done.
Folks that can deliver are encouraged to deliver.
Right,
Okay.
but those fund sources where you see the little NY, that's the off the top.
This one's,
We don't, this one's not, but the prior two were, so there are funds that go into a different cycle. Then they come here to this table,
So the NYs are the,
they're the statewide.
that's the money that, well, you call it statewide pop, but it's federal aid.
yeah, it's about 30% held to help deliver mega projects or main office priorities. And then there's the region. Folks aren't capturing all the regional. Other regions that can deliver.
Okay.
Man,
Maybe, what's the traffic on this bridge? Very,
it's around 800. It's actually more than Nelson Ave, which is.
that's what I'm saying, it seems like a Nelson, like, are you even looking at like, do you need the bridge?
And through the process, I'm not gonna lie, that
Looked at.
has to be looked at, but we're doing this action in anticipation that a permanent removal is not tenable, but those conversations, of course, need to happen with the.
There was a bridge up there and that you thought about that.
That's it,
Yeah.
And then it was
Nelson.
was that Nelson and the public.
Because this seems
drive.
just like Nelson.
It's, there's enough businesses around it that, you know, we have to do our homework and read the room, but we're anticipating a similar situation in Nelson that at the end of the day, that is likely not a tenable conversation.
Have you ever had a bridge meeting where you said, I'm gonna close the bridge and everybody said, God, I agree with you. I'm so happy that we're closing this bridge, you know what, don't, has that ever happened?
Yeah, actually down on I-88 we did, and the people on the road loved it because now they live down a cul-de-sac.
Good.
So we've been successful in removing bridges, but it's gotta be a very short detour. The recipe is short detour, low traffic and no businesses. If you can check all those three boxes, you can at least advance the idea. But without all three, it's a very challenging conversation.
All right. Any more questions for Greg? Can we get a motion for the I-87 bridge replacement cost increase? 3.1? Wait, Lisa, get a second. Just modeling Andrews and any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Thank you, motion carries. Amendment 4. New Carter Road in Washington Avenue roundabout, is that where we're at? Yeah, Albany County. Lisa's gonna.
Yeah, so we currently have a New Carter Road rehabilitation project in the tip that includes a new roundabout at New Carter Road. And through the design process, we've learned that there's an extensive time for permitting due to endangered species, the Carter butterfly. And the whole permitting process would set the project back, you know, long enough that we are concerned about the fact that the road really needs to be paved sooner rather than later. So what we're proposing is pulling the roundabout out of our roadway reconstruction project and making it its own project so that we can progress the paving of New Carter Road sooner rather than later and have the roundabout still happen, but knowing that it's going to happen a few years down the road.
Now, this is a
HSIP,
which is curious too, because
it's more than.
when I look at the regional, I know because they sent us the HSIP, I don't know, the study that Gary's been working on, or some consultant's been working on to identify locations where there's high accident rates. So I was going through that. Okay, do we have anything that's gonna be eligible? And this intersection doesn't show up.
It's
So then it started thinking about, okay, HSIP, it used to be like, well, you gotta have. Because I've approached the state before in other intersections, lots of accidents. Well, there's a ton of volume. So the accidents,
clear.
you would need like 6 deaths and something else to be eligible. So when I looked at this one, and not to say it's not a good project, and there's a lot of congestion there. It's not, doesn't show up.
Clear seems to have changed the game in the analysis built into the system. We've pivoted away from crash rate comparisons and it was always a complex form, like even in the old way of the form and following the process. Clear safety built in a system to do potential safety improvement, which is a different way of thinking. Anyway, it calculates the BC within the system now. And we also have updated the value of serious injuries and such, so that the benefit is higher. So therefore, your BC is easier to achieve a 1.0 or better. And so,
So the current data that we're looking at and consultant is flawed.
no, this is from clear as well.
What you saw, Steve, is specific to fatalities and serious injury crashes, as I recall, whereas the statewide database encompasses all crashes, so there are instances, and this location may be one, where we have a high number of property damage crashes or fender benders, we'll call it. But it gets flagged in the DOT system because of the sheer volume of the crashes.
Is there a DOT system we can look at as locals?
Clear as a
Seems
wall
to
to
see-
everybody.
You all have access to clear.
Yeah.
All locals have access to clear.
So any intersection or any road segment's gonna show up as HSIP eligible?
No, it's.
If it's on the clear system.
It's not, it's a little more technical than that, but you can do an assessment of the location in your community to see if it gets over that BC ratio of 1. It is, I will premise that by saying the data for the state highways is a little more robust than county and local roads. Because, for example, traffic volume data and some other sort of data points need to be part of the system. We just have, DOT just has more information on their roads than some of the other. But yeah, no, the clear system's open to anyone who wants it.
Okay, so that's a link you could send around or something I can get to, but.
We can send that.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I've looked at number of intersections, lots of accidents, maybe a lot of, maybe not fatalities, but the response has always been, well, it's not really HSIP eligible because nobody's died, and, you know, so I'm like.
The
what-
methodology
you know.
definitely changed with the clear system, and they, frankly, the department sort of ditched the old way of doing it, where you, to your point, you had to have 2 fatalities to even qualify, that's no longer the case. The SS4A is looking at things through a different lens, so that's why the data set that you saw may not match up with what Greg is describing.
There's only a 6-month lag now too in the data, so like last month I was looking at December's data from 2023. Which was much better than the old system where it was
Much longer.
much longer.
So there's a lot more projects eligible for HSIP than there used to be.
Yes, in the long and the short, you're much easier to meet the 1.0 bar for each.
So the locals would have a much easier time now meeting HSIP requirements, which have been very hard to do.
Correct.
So when did that change? Is that,
With the rollout of clear, which has been a fits and starts, partial rollout, and then the full clear safety is finally out, and
And an update of internal DOT policy, the infamous red book and the yellow book, like they used to be called, there's some guidance documents on how we calculate these things.
because I always thought it was federal down. The DOT was always, well, the feds, you need to do this to be HSIP eligible.
it's a partnership with the feds to get this system out and approved, so that we're all on the same page. But we work with them.
And this money, the HSIP money is coming from,
This is confusing me. I don't get this chart. And just so this is saying that the proposed amendment draws down from funds from 5-year highway safety improvement program, HSIP, CDTC 33. So up there, that's the set aside?
This was the set aside of funds that we had in the tip with the intent of spending it on local safety projects. Because we're so close to the update period and we haven't drawn down on it, we're not done with the SS4A plan yet. That's where I think the opportunity to add these funds from the set aside came in.
So we're gonna take that 4 million and stick it below where the 6.8 million is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where those numbers don't add up.
Yeah,
Where's the other 2.8?
so this is another example of the statewide HSIP is never fully or challenged to be fully obligated. So we're able to, again, increase our planning target or to balance the fiscal constraint table.
It was, shouldn't it say that somewhere, like,
Well,
no, it
from
says
the-
a local match. But it doesn't say anything about the $2.8 million gap.
I mean, for instance, Albany County doesn't have control over planning targets and statewide awareness, so we are bringing 2.8 more million to the table. saying, we're gonna add a 20 million to the planning target because we're aware of the statewide lack of spending HSMP.
And then how come we don't talk about project 295? Where's that guy? This says that 295 will be changed to no longer improve the roundabout. So shouldn't 295 have like a decrease in funds?
So 290, I mean, I figured I'll just chime in quickly. 295 never really included the funding for the roundabout. It originally had no roundabout. I think it was like November of last year, the county said, hey, like, we're gonna add 150,000 because we think this roundabout's coming. I think it was added to right away. So with that, instead of just doing as an admin mod, we did it as an amendment and added the roundabout description to that project. And then, you know, a month or two later, it's, well, actually, we think that's gonna be a different project. So this is truly a full new funded project. It wasn't,
Yeah, I guess,
the funding wasn't initially in 295.
I don't know how much you guys really care about this being some kind of official document. It just seems confusing as hell. Like, I look at this and I'm at 2.8 million short. It says it's a 5-year set aside, so it looks like I'm committing myself to next year's set aside to make up the shortage. And a roundabout got changed, but we don't put the roundabout on here like we usually would. So it just doesn't look like the roundabout's associated with it.
That is this is a new.
I know what you're saying. I'm just usually when you have it, like, I expected this up here to say, you know, pin 132.16, A295.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is missing is the table that shows the impact on A295, which we can make that adjustment.
Right.
This has to go to our policy board anyway, so
And
we
then I
can
would
make
just-
that adjustment.
I would just note where the additional $2.8 million. I don't know why that's not a rounding error.
It's a planning target adjustment.
Ultimately, though, there is no funding in 1895, which is why it's not showing as a table.
Yeah,
But
we can
we
show it,
could
just to
show it
show
as
there's
a-
zero
as a zero.
impact, if that's helpful.
Because we're just saying the project description.
Right.
Change.
Right.
So A295 is moving forward now,
As is.
now,
A295 is just the paving of the road.
and they're just paid.
Right.
Okay, and then pet accommodations associated with the roundabout, what is that?
Just the fact that the roundabout is going to have pedestrian accommodations as opposed to not.
So the only pet accommodation in this project is just at the roundabout.
No, the
No.
broader quarter project has like.
Yeah, there are sidewalks being added
Yeah.
in certain
In,
spots
in the
outside the
project that's
roundabout.
going on in A295.
Right.
Yeah.
We can prepare, I guess, for the policy board meeting, a second sheet that might
Make it
spell this out a little bit
Yeah.
better.
295 was presented, but wasn't it? An overview of the project with the
Yeah.
consideration of the roundabout.
So probably in November, or the fall of last year is when that amendment went through.
And the round-
To add,
'Cause
basically that was just adding description.
It really was because the design process going on was leading us, or we.
It was
found
showing
really-
that it would benefit
Right.
to
Right.
have the roundabout.
The roundabout had a little bit of a grade issue on the north side, was it the northwest side?
There's a retaining wall would be necessary to keep things tight and minimize the impact of endangered species,
Okay.
but
So the estimate's pretty considered pretty spot on, as opposed to the potential for increase on top of the 7.
this estimate is like an updated number
Okay.
to this, to current
In-
inflation.
Something like the downstream impacts or something like this, cause I don't go through here that often, but the traffic backs up from Western Avenue to this intersection. So I'm just curious, when you did the roundabout at Carmen Road, you realized, oh, now we're gonna have to do another roundabout. So I was just curious, I looked at the intersection of Route 20 and 155, and because that traffic pretty much backs up the whole way.
Yeah, so this is,
Into this
it's
roundabout.
actually a county road, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I assume they understand that one signal not gonna back up to another.
No, it's not. I mean, I think Joe Semino is on the call too, I believe, and he can comment on that. They wouldn't have recommended the roundabout as an alternative if it was going to have deleterious impacts on lights back ahead and behind it. It wouldn't have even made the cut as a design option.
So the traffic backing up to that intersection isn't really an issue.
Sounds like it's not at the end of the day, but
Joe, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, Yeah, there is, I mean, certainly that traffic at those two outside intersections are part of our study. You know, there are some level of service concerns at those existing intersections, namely Route 20. And also all the way in the other end of the project is the Vly Road intersection that's actually being repaired now by the county under another project. So, you know, looking at those intersections, we do show some congestion there. The spirit of the first project, though, of course, is the overlay and fixing of the construction of the pavement itself. The roundabout, or this intersection in the middle of the project, became prevalent when we, in due diligence and doing our design approval document and so forth, did traffic analyses here at this New Carner and Washington Avenue extension as part of our, you know, typical due diligence for traffic studies. That's where we saw quite a bit of congestion. And the recommendation under the smaller project was just going to be a very minimal improvement and really spending money where there would still be a congestion issue. So we brought it up with DOT at that time, just to more as an awareness. And that's where this kind of all evolved as a second project for the roundabout. The fact that it was going to slow down the pavement of the first project is really why the whole team is proposing to separate them, where at one point it was thought to be a good idea to combine it all, given the environmental issues and the length of time it's going to take to, you know, get a roundabout in there. Certainly separating them will help both projects happen. The paving quicker than the roundabout itself. But yes, under the first project, we have studied the Route 20 intersection as well, and there's no doubt there is some congestion there that we show. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but given the 1R nature of that intersection, it didn't rise to the level of congestion that this particular roundabout proposed roundabout location did. So this is the one we, you know, in the middle of the project, we wanted to bite off with the state, and they agreed that it is on the list of the congested intersections in the county. I think that was in the region that was presented about 6 months ago at this planning committee. The other one, the 155 intersection, sure. There's probably some mitigating things that the state could do, but that would be then another big project. The intermixing of the two intersections, though, the length between them is far enough away where our determination was that the improvements here at this roundabout, you know, should they go in under the second project, will benefit that intersection. Probably have our contention of minimal effect, good or bad, on the Route 20 intersection, and that would be another. If that intersection were to, you know, be something that regionally we'd want to fix, that would be a whole nother state project, but not one that this roundabout would substantially change in either way. So,
Right, so there's no relationship between the
Right.
two, like you looked at before, so.
Correct.
This impact, so the traffic that backs up to that intersection is not really gonna have an issue with the roundabout.
right.
Two quick questions. Where is the city and county ownership control of Washington Ave and New Carner stop? I thought this,
Washington Ave extension is the state,
It's a state road there.
that's our road. And then 155 is a county touring route, which is a strange one. No,
because I mean, I'm going back to our old project, there's all those rules where the city still has to maintain and do other things in that corridor, especially on
yeah,
like stormwater and things like that and lights, but okay, so controlled by, so how about speed limits? Are they changing? So the city changing their speed limits doesn't affect this because you both control them. Okay, but
So you state will own the roundabout.
that's kind of where I was going to, yeah, so is it a shared?
That's a good question, because like typically, if there's a county and state intersection, the state would govern the traffic signal. And in this case, there's not gonna be a traffic signal, so I don't think the determination is on the plans.
yeah, we'll figure out, this is not to be lit, so we'll figure out. Therefore, we own the lighting, which we prefer roundabout lighting to a signal, because it's a lot easier to maintain.
Mhm.
We'll have to hash that out.
Okay,
Ours is about, you just drew a line
Or, that's the screen, so you approve that.
Did you?
You guys come and plow and you lift the plow and you come around it, and then you go and plow the other way. Yeah, it'll be fun for you. That's fun.
The part of the project that the city is within the city's geographic lines is very, very short and limited. I think, you know, if Albany were to look at a citywide reduction of speed limits and so forth, I'm not sure that this road would be part of that, given that it is a county owned and maintained road and the section within the city confines is very limited. I'm not sure exactly how long, but you could probably driving at 40 miles an hour, you may not even know you're in the city for more than a couple seconds. It's just a weird geometric, I should say, I guess, boundary lines of the city that even the town of Colony comes into play too, all in this corridor, as well as the county, Guilderland. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on there, but most of it is town of Guilderland and then town of Colony. Very little city of Albany.
It's the drag racing section a lot. Where they let them drag race at night, or go through there one.
I think the words let them, it really is not.
I don't know, I was there one night, and it's like, there's a big party going on at the Polish Community Center, and I like drove into the middle of this drag race, and I was like, if you go out to that intersection, all you see is like burn marks on.
Fast and Furious.
You weren't invited, Steve. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
They just drag race there. I think it's a regular, like, they get together Friday or Saturday night to.
I'm certain it is not city or DOT endorsed.
It happens. All right.
I'll move it with Chris's requested.
To
additional
clarify,
language.
sure.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Second, right, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Amendment 5. Which is what? Dimmick Road over Snook Hill, bridge replacement, Saratoga County.
Yes, and Greg Ball has joined us virtually, who can explain the project a little bit.
Yeah, so the project is just a culvert replacement. That's an old steel multi-plate, about 32-foot span. I think it was built right around 1941. So we're just looking for the replacement of that. We're looking for the schedule change. Just pushing things out a little bit to get started here. We see that the SLA would probably be towards the end of the year, so that would push the design and the right of way into next year. Just kind of the way the environmental process is going too. We also know that that's going to push things out, just kind of the historical way it's been going here recently. It's taken a little bit longer. So with that, there's some slight bumps in funding. Hopefully they're minimal. And then once, we determine in the future here, the exact structure that we're looking to replace it with, we will probably have to come back requesting some construction funding.
There is construction funding for it. It's just.
Yeah, just with the inflation there, we typically, the prices have been going up quite a bit, as we've all seen.
So the cost increase for this is just reflecting.
So there's some small cost increases.
Not construction.
Not in construction. But truly what brings it to the committee is moving the construction year from 25 out into 27.
Correct.
Cost increases could have been done with an admin fund, but moving that schedule is what.
Okay, that's the schedule move is what we're.
And he's saying likely at some point. there
Be
may
in for construction.
Actual construction money, which we would address.
Is there anything specific in the environmental review that's causing the delay, or is it just general processing slowdown?
I think it's just general processing slowdown. Nothing specific here at this point.
All right, so it's just a schedule move. at this
Yes.
point.
Correct.
Any questions for Greg? More discussion, and can I get a motion to approve their request for the schedule change? Motion. Yeah, Andrew, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone opposed? Staying motion carried. Schedule is changed. All right, item 6, implementation plan, assurances, revision and update.
This will be super quick compared to what we just went through. So as part of our certification review a few months ago, one of the topics that came up was our Title VI procedures, we'll call it that. Since that time, the Federal Highway Administration during the review pointed out that we had some dated material and that there were some better practices. So we've updated our Title VI document to reflect those revisions, which primarily involved or relate to who, if we were to have a Title VI complaint, that it would go to the Federal Highway Administration. That's essentially the revision. So I just need your approval to make that change. We'll have the policy board endorse it as well. So that we can make that part of our official policies.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions, Sandy? Can we get a motion? Motion. Thank you, Greg. Let me get a sec. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Sandy. Congestion management process, technical assistance, field visits and problem statements. This is Andrew.
We'll be describing this. I think of the setup. I do want to say that this is going to be added to our technical assistance program as some of the offerings. So take it away, Andrew.
Sure, we've been talking a lot about congestion today, so I wanted to provide a brief update on our congestion management process. As you'll recall, this was adopted by Policy Board back in December of 2023, and since then we've been hard at work implementing all of the next steps that were listed at the back of the document. We've been working on a refresh of all of the travel time data in the region using the new calendar year 2023 data. So that's almost complete. We're just waiting on one more data set. We are developing corridor level strategy recommendations as well. And we'd like to work with DOT on advancing that task too. And we're going to start working on before and after studies as well. We're developing a template for that to determine how effective recent projects were in treating congestion. One of the next steps that was listed in the document is to perform field visits to locations we identified as congested. We know that our travel time data sets don't provide the full picture, and we need to collect ground level data to help us identify what the most effective strategies would be for each of our congested locations. And so Transportation Council staff will be visiting some of these locations, and we will be completing a checklist of observations, which was also included in the mailouts. The checklist of observations will include us taking a look at the traffic signal timing and phasing, if it's a signalized intersection, signal coordination on corridors, which we talked about quite a bit on Hoosick Road. But that's a topic we can talk about for many signalized corridors. We'll be looking at turning lanes, queue storage, transit operations, freight operations, access management, safety, pedestrian crossings, bicycle operations. And also, while we're out there, some non-congestion related things like the condition of the infrastructure and physical characteristics of the site. So we're going to do these field visits and compile our observations into brief problem statement memos that would be shared with the roadway owner. We hope that these problem statements would help better inform future projects at these locations with the goal of helping to scope out cost-effective, so-called low-hanging fruit improvements. And we'd like to get this started this summer so we can have some of these complete in advance of the tip update that will begin at the end of the year. So if you're interested in having a field visit done at one of your congested locations, please contact me or Sandy, and we'll be reaching out to some of you to do field visits at locations that were already identified as congested in last year's congestion management process.
And just going back to what Andrew said about doing this before the tip update, that's why we're bringing this to you. In fairness to all the sponsors, I didn't want us to get in a situation where Andrew went out and did this for community one. And the opportunity was not made available to other communities, so we're not gonna be picking the locations until we hear from you folks. So if you are interested in this, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to schedule these, but we wanted to be fair to all the sponsors in the region, particularly if it might feed into a tip project.
Some of this is independent of any requests. I mean, you're out there, you know, kind of some of them.
We know the,
We'll,
you know,
we'll,
we
we'll
know
contact, if we think there's a very congested location in Schenectady County, I'm not just gonna go out there on my own, I'll contact you first.
right. But the point being is that we just didn't want to do that for Schenectady without everybody having the same opportunity.
Right. So, no motion, this is just information.
No, we didn't need a motion, but I just saw a hand.
I just had a question. I was wondering if that field visit checklist is available or will be made available so that anyone else can use it as a useful tool on any ongoing projects.
That's fine, I believe it was included in the mail
It
out,
was in the.
feel free. It was,
Website.
the checklist that was shared was geared mostly towards signalized intersections and corridors, which we feel is where most of our congestion is. But if you have a location that's not a signalized intersection, you know, maybe it's a junction or something like that, we'll look at it, but that's what it was geared toward. And I'll just also note, we'll also be reviewing all of the data at that location in advance of doing the field visit, so we'll look at all of the travel time data that we have. We'll pull the crash data and take a quick look at that as well. And we'll summarize all of that into the problem statement report as well.
So we have to approve the technical assistance, side like a UPWP thing that you're
Yeah,
already.
this is an
doing.
adjustment to our technical
Adjustment.
assistance program
Okay.
offerings.
Okay. All right, then, can I have that motion to approve the technical assistance work related to the CMA? Oh, thank you, Lisa. Do I have a second?
Greg?
Greg, thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussions? Any
Thank you.
further questions? Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Thank you, Andrew. Looking forward to that. That could be interesting.
Yeah, that'll probably be interesting to a lot of folks, and like I said, my main concern was just making sure that everybody had access. That we weren't gonna just be picking people because we happen to think it's an important.
But you will be reaching out for some
We'll
specific.
we'll reach out to everybody who
where you
has a
think there's a
congested corridor in their
There,
community.
which will be everybody.
It will be everybody.
All right,
We can't guarantee we're gonna get to them all, but we
Yeah.
will schedule them as we receive them.
discussion items, state transportation master plan and in motion plan status.
Yeah, this is just a quick brief update on some of the regional and statewide planning going on. So if you weren't aware, the New York State Transportation Master Plan has gotten to the point where they have developed goals and a vision statement. And there's a survey open seeking feedback on that, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention in case you were interested in what the statewide plan is developing. I will say, the language that they're using is, for what I've seen from DOT in the past, pretty progressive. But it's also consistent with what we're developing for our regional plan here, so we're on the same page with some of the language contained in that. And then in terms of the in motion plan where we're at, we've completed more or less the phase 1 and phase 2. You know, as I've said in the past, the documents do remain draft. As we're getting a lot of feedback, the current survey, we've already had in just 2 weeks, 50 surveys filled out. We're gonna be out all summer trying to get more feedback on the plan and the goals and project ideas. There's a lot of good information on there. We have our consultant on board working on photo and video logs, starting the needs assessment. We just had a task force meeting, we'll have another one in the fall. I did want to share our phase 1 survey results, which kind of pointed to, and this is organized by the top priority in this table, but the public said more or less, the message here is we want more options for transportation, more sidewalks and bike lanes, more transit, just more options generally. But they also emphasized safety and the basics of maintenance, filling the potholes, making sure we can still use things, right? Interestingly, another priority that may not have been the public's first priority, but was still high ranking was technology. And we're hearing more and more about the desire for increased use of technological interventions in all forms of transportation. So that was interesting result. And then the category here, which was deemed not a priority, and we've just reinforced what we've heard in other things, is building more roads and highways. So there are some consistencies in the different surveys being portrayed out there. And this will obviously help inform the plan moving forward. And in terms of our equity assessment of who responded to the survey, we captured many of the categories that we're following pretty well, except for folks that identify as Latino or Hispanic, not white, and those who don't speak English as their primary language. So we're gonna work on that. I think we're gonna host a table at Latin Fest in Albany. So maybe we can capture some of the folks that we might not get in some other venues. So try to make some progress on that. So that new public survey is out. And we'll be asking you guys, and I have some information I'll send following the meeting. And some of you may have seen it through our advisory committees. Just encourage you guys to take the survey and help spread the word about the survey through your municipal or other social media accounts. And that would be really helpful. And again, if you have events in your community, let us know, because then we can work toward tabling or at least being part of that. So that's just a brief update. Just want to share where we're at with that.
So Cindy,
project.
with the comments that come in. If you look at the demographic and the potential to essentially stuff the ballot box. Where is that countered? Where is the caveat identified that these directions are based upon a survey group of XYZ? So you can have people who are advocates for one particular thing that are forcing the direction, because we're just not getting surveys filled out by a broad swath of the population that we're trying to get information from.
Part of that gets normalized by where we go. And when we see the upticks on when survey pools come in. So for example, I just put out the newsletter for our office last week. There was a huge uptick. So that could be a wide range of folks. When we go to like a transit station pop-up event, which we're gonna do two, one in Albany, one in Schenectady, we'll see a different set of demographics coming from that. When we go to the fairs this summer. So that's how we're trying to normalize it, is by how, how we're doing our outreach and where we're going. There's no doubt, like our advisory committees here, each advisory committee is probably viewing it through the lens of their topic area. That's why we're trying to go broader than that.
Okay, thank you.
I asked the same question at those meetings. There's no way you can stop the vocal minority. For all you know, Albany Bike Coalition, as soon as they get your newsletter, sent it out their entire list and said, fill this out.
Yeah.
You won't know, because there's no way you can know
Well,
that. Somewhere in Yankee, somewhere in
You
Albany.
get a
somewhere-
name and an email address attached to the survey
Yeah.
generally.
But it doesn't say I love bikes.
Yeah.
Pat Jordan likes to drive fast.
Fair. Like anything, we do the best we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all you can.
But I will say that other planning studies have seen the consistency in these themes. And even the Brunswick survey that was shared earlier, that corridor has a huge traffic issue, and it's not surprising to see that traffic was, like, we just want to be able to get through here and not be the priority. That's not surprising to see, but when you step back and look at some of the other things that were said in that survey, you start seeing similar patterns. So, we're gonna continue to get more input and do the best we can.
Pat, to your point, we just said, I calculated the average speed through that corridor is 10 miles an hour. 14 miles, so if you change the speed to 25, I would just love to see the people sitting there.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. This is what they did, huh? You're like, we did it. They have like a ribbon cutting.
It's one of those funny things with me, because it's just my, so we'd have this discussion with Trudeau or Randy, and like. My wife and I was sitting in the car going through Albany, I'm like, nothing about this is calming me right now. If anything, my blood would go, and I'd say, I gotta go down Dana, I go down Myrtle. And I would think to myself, oh my God, I wouldn't wanna live here right now because everybody just got pushed off of these main roads because we calmed those roads by going from the 4 lanes that have been there for 100 years to 2 lanes. It's one of those things that really bothers me when we talk about some of these things.
Change is hard, but it's coming. Go to the Central Avenue meeting in Albany and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, look,
And that'll just push those cars into the neighborhoods. It's just, there's no,
You gotta have the double.
they can say whatever they want about how the end outcome is, the same amount of cars are gonna be there. And they'll just be driving faster to the neighborhood, which makes it.
not sitting here today, I would argue that these projects are setting up a different future. And different needs. One of the interesting things from these surveys, and when we look at the age of the respondents and how they're responding. By age range, and given our region is older, John and I were just talking before the meeting about the students that came to a public meeting that he had last night. They're demanding different things.
Yeah.
How that translates with it, because we're not designing the system for me, we're not designing it for you, we're really designing it for these kids.
Yes.
When we're looking at the 2050.
And perception
Right,
is so much different. It's like, people argue, oh, I sat at that light for 15 minutes. And it was a
30
minute, so, yeah, it was like, so, like, even at like Western and 155, which is, you know, very congested. But, you know, Friday at a 5:30 and I'm backed all the way up to wherever, it only took one cycle of a light, one additional cycle of light for me to get through, so. You know, sometimes it's, people are,
Right, how it is, yeah.
you know, say, oh, it took me forever, it's like, really? It took an extra, 20 seconds, you
It's
know, so
also
it's.
the
people-
advocacy of the current. So you've got a 20-something saying what they want now. Instead of, well, what do you want your kid to have? So it's a perspective that's not often. Brought to the table. It's more the immediacy of what they want to change, what they want to see change in their lifespan. I ride a bike right now. But when they're 50, are they still gonna be riding a bike? They're not looking at the perspective of, well, how do you hit all the checks for the generational change that's going to occur? So it has to, that's why I brought up the normalization for the data issue, because there are segments of the population that when things actually go into play are gonna be 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. How are things gonna change in that way with technology changes as well as just a general attitude? So.
Observation that I have seen in the city, and I don't know how it is in the suburbs. I do think that knowing people who have Tesla, self-driving, I know that, Mike, right, he was big into that, the self-driving. I think that's going to make a very large impression if we ever get it. But in the city, one of the things that I didn't see it coming necessarily, but now that I see it, it is here, are the electric bikes are now, just unregulated motorcycles.
Yeah.
And so that are allowed to go on sidewalks, roadways, paths. I'm just saying, it's like but are we really enforcing? If you were to have your police forces here, are they really enforcing it? No. So they're allowed then. If you're not enforcing it, you are allowing.
Well, it's electric
So
scooters.
what I'm
as
just
well.
saying is, that is when they, all of a sudden we got into lithium batteries, high power, little motors, all this, and you're like, it's great, look at the cars. I didn't see the bikes coming, and the bikes are everywhere. And they are, and once again, it's higher speeds, higher range. The only reason I thought of that is when you said what happens when you get older, and my father-in-law, who was, 70 and rides a bike, he is now going to a assist bike. He's like, hey, I can get 30 miles at 30 miles an hour on the
Yeah.
bike. It's like,
It
okay,
al-
well,
it
now
also-
that's more of a motorcycle.
It also
now.
provides, in Troy, right? When the CDTA bikes are out there, well, we have a corridor, it's a flat corridor. But with the e-assist bikes, now you can go up hills, which
Yeah.
prior to that were not even in play because they're just not viable. So you're broadening the areas that people can go to, but you're also creating a lot more safety issues happening as a result of those grades.
And when I talked with Jen when she was here about bike paths, because Steve and I were working on Craig Street, 8 was the min, now 10, and she's saying that in her surveys that she was doing, because of the speeds of the electric bikes, they're trying to go to 12. And so everything's getting bigger, faster and odder.
Lane widening. But
I know,
for
but
cars.
not for cars. So that's the only thing I can see is those, but I can see that coming up, how do we get those bikes? A lot of them. And now there's this blurred line between motorcycle and scooter. There was a motorcycle in City Hall. No plates, no nothing, but it wasn't a motorcycle, it was, looked like a motorcycle, but it had a battery, but it was kind of small, but it was
a mini bike.
not a mini bike bigger than, I'm gonna say, it's the most hybrid thing I've ever seen. And we just got police around it, and we just stared at it, and we just said, we don't know what to do with this right now.
Did the
And
owner
they
come
all-
out?
we waited for 15 minutes, to see if the owner came out, and then we all just dispersed and said, we don't know what to do. And eventually it moved.
So this project
Johnny Cash
topic
is
of
writing a
the
new
mic-
song.
of the micro mobility and e-bikes and e-scooters, and there's all kinds of platforms out there now, you know, will be certainly part of the long range plan, and no city in the United States is grappling this more than New York City right now. And I think we're gonna learn a lot over this next year on what's working, what's not working, and the things that they're challenged by, because they have a lot of challenges there, so. It's an evolution, everything's an evolution, you know.
You see the ball? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, we've got a
Oh,
whole network
good
of them in the
lord.
city of Albany, they
It's
look
not
like little skateboards with a ball.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even small, it's the
Yeah.
uni tire, the
Yeah.
wheel.
It's like a single
I had
tire.
one cutting through traffic on Route 4 the other day, going going faster than the vehicle.
They should open your car door.
I thought about it, but.
So your MPOs are looking at that? What did you call it? Micro travel?
Micro mobility, you'll start hearing that word more and more.
Micro.
What about, like automatic delivery systems? Is that gonna be part of the plan in the same way?
I mean, we have to start
technology-
looking at these technologies, which right now are sort of in development, I mean, driverless
Yeah.
cars we've heard about for a long time, but you're saying, these driverless delivery
Yeah, you're already
vehicles,
on it.
you know, there's all kinds of things coming down the pipeline, and this is what the young people want, right? So coming back to what I said a few minutes ago, when we're thinking 2050, it's gonna be them, and what they're gonna be used to, and they're gonna be much more familiar and comfortable with some of these technologies than the folks sitting here in this room, maybe.
I was gonna ask, like, what is it that they want, and are they into like mass transit? Are, you know, because things are, with the cost of things and with young adults, everything's so expensive, it's hard for them to even afford a car,
And I
let
think
alone
that's what drives
insurance.
it. think
And
that's
so
what drives
if you can get an e-bike and get back and forth to work just as easy, even though it's cold out for a little bit of the time. Yeah, I think that that's gonna be what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if like mass transit up Central Avenue, like rather than buses, even I like envision like a tram that just
Yeah.
goes back and forth, like I have in Charlotte. I was, you know, just there and
I was gonna point out to the weirdness, so I like the micro transit, I text that out, but. I know, hold on, but somebody I know, because I just don't know how this all works in the plan, is that somebody I know lost their license. And they couldn't have a car, so they bought an e-bike, because they couldn't get a license, but the e-bike. Was a bike, his commute, everything didn't change, nothing changed for him, other than the fact that he wasn't driving a motor vehicle, he was driving a e-vehicle. So, you know, so I can see more people doing things like that.
The state will catch up with that soon. I think those will be designated as motorbikes in a very near future.
Or they'll.
All right.
Okay, I don't mean to cut you off, but
on.
good conversation.
Moving
will be part of the
moving
conversation.
along, I forgot where we were. Draft tip guidance, is that what we're?
Yes, we are
All right.
moving to
Jacob.
Jacob.
So we have a draft tip guidance document that, we've been working on with our tip task force, so I think a lot of you in the room, and online have probably seen this in some form already. But what this is intended to be is really, you know, just a guidance document for our upcoming tip process. This slide here, this is basically just table of contents. You know, we're hoping that this document is something that anybody could read through and just kind of get an understanding of what the process is going to be. You know, what is the tip, who's eligible, what type of fund sources are we looking at? Project categories and evaluation criteria, which I'm gonna talk a little bit more about. What's the application process like? And then kind of how do we program and approve, the actual projects and the funding, and then, a tip timeline, which is, it's there, but it's also in the document, and that's just, not too technical, but just hopefully some general kind of high, weight tops, if you will, on what the process is, when are we meeting, what are we approving, at those meetings. Next slide. So the two bigger pieces, again, a lot of the eligibility stuff and fund sources are things that we've always kind of dealt with in the tip. But two of the bigger pieces are what are the project categories, and that's kind of how we, compartmentalize the projects when they come in, and so how we can score them and rank them against each other. And then what is the actual criteria that we're using to score them? So we've developed 6 project categories for this tip update. And again, we worked with the tip task force to try to kind of make this, what are the categories that the likely projects are gonna come in? And we wanna categorize them by kind of that project type. So that when they're scored against each other, it's kind of an apples to apples comparison, or as much of that as we can get. So each of these categories has its own application. So we tailor that application to be asking the questions that are meant for that particular project type. And then when they're scored, they're ranked against each other. And then, it's kind of in this document, but as many of you have been a part of, then kind of when we make that programming decision, we rank them among their own category and kind of see where they fall. The big piece here that we kind of wanted to make sure that everyone knows and mention it and maybe spark a little more discussion. So typically we'll have a safety category. And this kind of goes back into that HTIP conversation that we had earlier. So after a lot of conversation with the TIP task force, a safety project could be almost in every one of these individual categories. It's not, it's safety, it's has a criteria that it can, a safety project could be complete streets, it could be bike ped, it could be, a bridge project. So with our existing SS4A project going on, kind of the proposal at this time is to reserve that HSIP funding for a separate solicitation, shortly after the SS4A project is completed, and then likely after the TIP process is done. But so that safety projects kind of get their own call for projects, their own criteria, their own attention, and then that way, all of our HSIP funding could be programmed specifically based on recommendations in the SS4A. So wanted to make sure that everybody knew as we're reviewing this document, keep an eye on that. Let us know what you think. Just wanted to make, as you read it, it may not be super apparent. But wanted to make sure that as everyone is going through that, we want to make sure that that that's what's being proposed there. Next slide.
And just to,
Jacob, didn't we just program 26, 27, 8?
So
well, I was just gonna say that. The whole, there's been no conversations about funding levels on any of these fund sources. This is just a pitch that we're trying to make, to put on the table for discussion. When we get the TIP planning targets from DOT, we'll have this bigger conversation about how to divvy up the funding. But this, that was the spirit of what we had with that other set aside, was to reserve some funding for these safety type projects. Whether that's there when we see the TIP targets, and I have no idea because I haven't seen any numbers yet, we'll have to wait and see.
Doesn't having the plan open the door for the SS4A implementation money?
100%, but we also anticipate some of those site-specific projects to be pretty small.
And HIP, no.
Right. Yep.
okay. So Chris, so quickly, the money that we just programmed is from last year.
We're adding 3 years of funding.
No, I know, it just says 25 to 2030, so I just borrowed it to see what year it was in there, and it said 2026.
So essentially that was just parked in that year.
Okay.
But when we start the new update, we're gonna have totally new numbers for the next 5 years. So that doesn't really impact this new money that we're talking about. Okay. So with that, right, we break the projects down into their categories. And then from there, we have our evaluation criteria. So many of you are probably familiar with, we kind of had a big spreadsheet with all of our different merit evaluations. That every project was kind of scored on the same criteria essentially. This time around, we're kind of changing it up a little bit to make those merit evaluations specific to each project type. So these are kind of the three pieces that is gonna go into evaluating each project. The first one being a benefit cost ratio. So that's the kind of the first half of the project evaluation, and that's very similar to what we've always done in the past. That's quantitative benefit cost ratios, but the benefit cost ratio will be used for the pavement, complete streets and bridge project types. So that's the kind of the first half of the evaluation for those three project types. Project benefits, we describe those in for the bike and ped only category and our congestion, freight and air quality category. And then from there, we have our merit evaluation component, which every project is going to be scored using a set of these merit criteria. But again, they're specific to each category instead of every project kind of having to check the same boxes. So the idea there is that there was a lot of maybe double dipping in the past where if you check the box in an environmental criteria, you might also score well in 3 or 4 others, but there's also 3 or 4 other categories that you're not scoring in at all. So the idea is that we want to kind of get rid of some of that overlap and the duplicative scoring, and just make sure that what we're evaluating makes sense for that specific project type with kind of 2 hopes that we're going to be able to ask everyone for less information and make it easier on ourselves to kind of score. So we've done a couple different scenarios where we've looked at old projects and used the new scoring methodology and compared it to the old, and things don't really change that much, which is hopefully the idea. We don't really want to make this a totally different game. We just want to make a better way of arriving at that answer. Next slide. So next steps, what are we really asking for? Again, we've shared this document with you all. This is just for discussion. We're not looking for action today. But we would like any comments from you all in the next 2 weeks. With that, we'll be able to have time to kind of turn that around and incorporate any of those comments by the August planning committee. And then with that, it would go to the policy board in September for action. And that would kind of kick off our tip update process, if you will. So again, this document is really meant to be kind of that starting point. And the big piece is really that evaluation criteria that is completely new from the last time. So we want to make sure that everybody gets plenty of time to review that and make sure that we're kind of making sure that we didn't miss anything. So I can answer any questions.
Questions of Jacob? We're all looking forward to our tip process.
Yeah, I was hoping our meetings would be shorter for the summer, in preparation for what's to come, but we'll see how that works out.
All right. Summary of 2022-27 tip admin modifications, that's done, right? Or is that still moving ahead? Right? See, tip admin modifications.
Yeah, this is me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, we had 6 admin mods since the May meeting. 4 of them were just schedule changes. 1 of them was just a funding shift from construction to CI, construction inspection. And then we had 1 state project that added 2 million of fully state funds.
Not a state project.
It's his project. The state project.
For Freehaven's Bridge that needs more than we
State's
thought.
project.
People can't stop giving me work. And it's just.
Help me out of that one.
Yeah, so 2.2 is that, 2.2 million?
No, it's not at it.
Because it's state
It's
money.
fully state money, so it's
Yeah.
not.
It's non-federal, it has no.
Yeah, but I would-
Okay.
That's the table, so.
That'll be good.
Alright. Okay, moving along, local project delivery update, Jacob, we're keeping you busy.
Yep, so with this one, right, as always, we've got our project tracking sheet that we've sent around. But at this point, we kind of just wanted to talk a little bit more about, again, kind of the tip update process, but. So taking a look at that sheet, we're starting to try and take a look at what's our role in
And
gonna
Jake,
be.
this is posted on the website, correct?
Um,
It needs to be posted next
Should
time.
be.
Yeah, okay.
sure,
You had a handout, that's why I was saying.
Right.
It's the same thing as on posted on the website.
yeah, I don't.
Okay, we'll figure that out later, but anyways, okay.
So we're starting to take a look at what the roll-in is going to be, for the tip update, and as many of you know, that plays a big impact on the new project, or the amount of funding that we have for new projects. So if you kind of dig deeper into this sheet that we show every week, which I do from time to time, we've got 55 active local tip projects. So again, this is only local, we don't have state projects on this list. And what I call active is essentially a project that's on the tip that started design, and not completed construction authorization yet. Because we could technically have a tip project that doesn't start until fiscal year 25, and they have, basically they don't have a chance to be above or behind schedule, so. So we have 55 local projects that have started design but not received construction authorization, with about a total cost of $126 million. So right now, that would be, we still have a year of program or of, opportunity to authorize. But right now, if we were to look at it today, that would be the role, or thereabouts.
That's why we're bringing this to your attention.
Yeah, so if we kind of chisel away at that a little bit more and only look at the projects that have construction authorization scheduled for 24 or earlier. So that's, could be a project that still has construction in last year that we haven't touched and rolled in yet. That's $58 million worth of local projects, 28 different projects, 58 million. So those would be the projects that, in theory, within the next month and a half are supposed to be obligated, according to the tip. So we assume that quite a few of those are going to end up rolling into 25, and then, from there potentially even further. What we're saying here, I guess, is that, we really need to start keeping an eye on our project delivery, making, every effort to start obligating these things, because it's only impacting future tip funding essentially. We are going to start our rolling kind of update process probably at the end of this month or into August. And that's where we're gonna be contacting every individual sponsor. And just getting a handle on where all of your projects are at. We typically ask for, the budget and schedule, any budget and schedule updates. So that if there are any, we take that into account when we're programming the new tip. So we make sure that everything that's on the existing tip, is in the right place when we start moving forward. So we're gonna be starting that process. On top of that, we know that we're going to have a larger roll-in than normal, maybe. If there's not a lot of big changes in the next year or so, which is likely going to have impacts on new project funding. However, we don't truly know how any of that will roll out until we get our budget estimates for the new tip.
Right, and as we saw with some of the earlier tip projects, Jacob didn't use the word inflation, we don't know the inflationary impacts on this existing program, so what was the all-in 100 and what million?
So 128
120.
million, 26.
I suspect that's a lot higher. And, you know, that's why we're gonna do this exercise in August, to kind of get a handle on what we do know at this point, because it could impact solicitation, it could impact planning targets, it could impact bigger conversations. It's, you know, for us internally here, we are a little concerned about the tip update. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat it, in terms of adding new things. So, you know, the more we can do to the extent possible to move these projects along, we understand there's a whole host of reasons why things slow down. You heard someone say, you know, just getting the environmental review done is taking longer. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles, I get it, but if there's things within our control, we should be trying to the extent we can to move these projects along.
Jacob, you reached out to some of the people, that's what you kind of keep us updated, right? Or sorry, what are you talking, I'm just picking random from just numbers, so like Village of Nassau intersection pedestrian, tip design 22, 23, detail 23, 34, everything's blank. So is that one of the ones that you're
We
like,
just haven't received information.
do
So,
you have any, like, is it just a consulting? Nothing.
so, I mean, I'll say
There's a
that,
bunch of those, like.
right, yeah,
$2
the
million, $3
caveat
million
with this is
projects.
always. This information is only as good as what we get. However. You know, we can dig deeper and go into the SIP, and when we talk to DOT, we can kind of. Maybe knock off a few of these that might have slipped through the cracks. But typically, like, the checkpoints in the middle
Yeah.
sometimes are blank. But usually when we know construction authorization has happened, we can figure that out and say, okay, like, we haven't gotten a consultant update, maybe.
No, I just didn't know before we started doing the tip solicitation, if we look, I mean. City of Waterville, 25th Street corridor, $6 million. Anything?
If it's not on there, no, we haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the
But
things
the
that.
other-
I'm sorry, Jake.
Oh, don't ask for a project.
One of the things that we're gonna try to do is, especially I'm looking at you, Randy, and your role over there, is to, I mean, when there's some information that the local program bureau gets that we don't have access to, so we wanna improve that line of communication. So that if we do know there's been a consultant hired, an RFP is out, whatever these steps are, that they've been more closely completed, and that'll help feed into this document a bit more. You know, Jacob does the best he can to reach out to the contacts we have, but if he's not getting a response, he's not getting a response. Sometimes you're dealing with a local government person that has a part-time job, sometimes you're not getting the consultant specifically. So, you know, we're gonna try to explore all of that, but there definitely may be gaps here, and that's why we're gonna do the exercise in August.
Yeah, and so, again, just for this spreadsheet, there's two major ways that we get the updates that go into here. The first one is we reach out once a month to 3 sponsors and try to hit every sponsor once a year. So that's, you know, if we're lucky and everyone responds and we get everything on time, that's once a year that we actually hear directly from a sponsor, from our own reach out. We're also copied on consultant updates to DOT, which don't necessarily come all the time, and there's really like 3 major consultants that we hear from. So if a project isn't using one of those consultants, we may not have any information on it. That does not necessarily mean that they're not doing any work on it. But we do know how many obligation or authorization we see per year. So
I think, you know, we can definitely fill in probably a lot of the blanks on that sheet at this point right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a few just from Albany on the top of my head that those projects are complete.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we haven't gotten updates. I don't know what's wrong with the other guy.
right, which I don't think is, you know, that's not the biggest, you know, people are busy. You don't
Yeah,
get an
there's
update.
a multitude of reasons.
Right, when it comes time for authorization, if there's an amendment needed, we know, you know, and so.
So where's the stick in the process? If someone fails to report for the consultant obligation for the monthly report, if that doesn't happen, if you don't get updates, project's not progressed. I mean, obviously, if that municipality comes to apply for a project in the future, we have that, but where's the stick to get the project advanced that's currently on the tip?
I mean, the local projects group follows up with the sponsors, and, you know, what we've seen, the short period that I've been there is you've got a lot of people retiring, a lot of officials leaving, new electeds, whatever the case may be. And I think some of the new people come in, they're not familiar with the process. And it's our job really to help guide them. So we meet with a lot of the sponsors on a regular basis on ongoing projects, but as far as what the stick is, they're, the de-obligate funding for somebody, I mean, it's.
Why do you only hear from 3 consultants?
Well, Jacob,
I guess that's, maybe you guys, so you do better than that.
We
It's not
gotta
just-
get the line of
It's
communication.
just, that would be surprising to me that any one of these consultants that's working on a federal aid job is not responding.
No.
We
Okay,
hear
that's not the case.
more than that. It's an accumulation of, between our tip process and then Bridge New York and TAP CRP now. There's a lot of projects on the street and the resource changes, the changeovers just seem to be slowing everybody down collectively. So it's an accumulated problem, but we should focus on it and try to get back on track.
At some point, we need the information, right? So.
I mean, there used to be a stick here in theory that if you didn't start your project in the tip year, you lost it. In theory, but that was always waived. So we just stopped and bring it up.
The only
It was at
reason
least a
that-
threat.
Yeah.
Not the only reason that would, so just because I think Sandy's point about inflation is that
Significant.
it's just so high every year lately that it's not the same, I don't feel like. So that's why I was just pointing out, these projects are delayed in design 2 years. They're gonna be back here and they're gonna say, you know what, my construction estimate's way low. And you're gonna go, well, you're 3 years when we did it. I mean, it happens all my projects, but I progressed in my projects. So I just, that's the only thing, everything's just, it's not 10% anymore, it's 25% higher.
Significant.
I think the tip task force at some point will have a conversation about the really old projects, the ones that have been sitting on the tip now, maybe they're on the second or third tip. Have not progressed. I think there needs to be an honest conversation at some point about what we're gonna do with some
Are
of
they
these
on
projects.
this list?
I think 2 or 3 months ago, we actually showed that specific.
Yeah, I think there were 15, 20 projects sitting there.
That was an old handout?
And
Yeah, I wanna say a few meetings ago, we had a more specific list that was like.
we can send that around.
But there's a couple that have been on 3 tips at this point. Potentially 4 if they roll over.
This is a good segue to the old STIP performance conversation as we head into August. The August planning committee is usually where we decide, we look at the STIP of what construction phases are sitting in the current federal fiscal year we're in. And we look at the project sitting in the following federal fiscal year that starts October 1. And we need it's twofold. We need to take the projects that aren't gonna get obligated 24 and move them to their correct year. And it may not just be the following year, because we have to make sure that the following year, our projects, we are highly confident will make it to construction. It is only the construction phase that we have to look at, but at the next meeting, we'll be discussing these project moves to make the STIP reflect what is reality of both the current year and that following year. So just be ready for that conversation next month as you think about your projects.
Just a little add-on to that, considering our project's advancement. Any update on Bridge New York funding?
Any day, sooner than it was, my old answer, a day sooner than it was.
No longer June, though.
Right, moving along. Nice dot, project deliveries and.
Yeah, real quick, I'll be quick on this. We recently awarded a I-90 paving project between the river and Fort Woods, that sections become frequent source of communication from the public. So, getting it done. And oddly, a few weeks ago, we let 2 projects on the same day, and neither project received a single bid.
Wow.
What type, paving?
Yeah, no, one was a highway aware and when project, which is frankly our emergency work order contractor. And that's basically all change order work, and it's generally a beneficial contract to whoever wins it. So it's surprising not to receive a single bid. And then the other one was a multi-site bridge preservation project, which sort of tells us possibly the theme, it's a highly labor intensive type work, because it's all the minuscule work on a bridge to fix tiny elements. We didn't receive any bids there, so we have others reaching out to industry to figure out exactly what's going on, because we're still hearing we're not delivering enough work on the street. But yet to get no bids is curious, so that was a surprising Thursday letting. For Dover, I think that's what I have then later, something.
Status of regional transportation planning initiative.
This is, the table's available on our website. We did wrap up the, correct me if I'm wrong with the title, Andrew, the local signal project. Signal timing project. We may bring that back in the next UPWP. It seemed like it was successful.
It worked very well. We retimed re-signalized corridors throughout the region. We have a little before and after data on each one. That will probably end up becoming one of the before and after studies that I complete as part of the ongoing CMP work, so I might have more to share with everyone in the near future.
We have our Niskuna linkage study MOU assigned, so we can start working on that. We are waiting on the MOU back from Saratoga County, so we can start the Half Moon Hilton Park one. So I think you do, Kim, to help facilitate that would be helpful. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Regional and local planning updates. Back to you, Sandy.
I think we've talked enough.
All right, Mark has left us. CDTA, I don't believe we have
Mike was listening in. Mike, do you wanna share anything from CDTA?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Just a quick update. So we have several mobility pubs in progress that are starting construction soon over the summer near St. Peter's and in Troy, as well as we are progressing the SS4A grant to construct the upgrades on the Red Line BRT in Schenectady. Also, a quick update on the TDP update. We have completed phase 2, which is the second public outreach portion of the TDP update process. Survey actually just closed yesterday. So we're working on a report to summarize the findings of phase 2 and are starting to outline the next phase, which will be the preparation of the TDP reports. So that will be what we're working on over the summer. So we'll certainly keep everyone advised as to our progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Back to Greg. Thanks, Don.
As you can all see online that Bob is off our books and on to other pastures. I'm now acting. Pasture, on other pastures. Greener pastures. Yeah. I am the currently acting role of RPPM right now. Stay tuned on that and other staffing changes. Chad Corbett, who is a resident engineer in Schenectady County, has taken the Albany County role as of very recently. And we're working to fill Schenectady as soon as we can. I'm at point to be. And then for those that deal with permits, for those that aren't aware, Guy Tedesco is now over in the local projects group. You know, Randy's still helping, but he's kind of more helping on the state side, so we're still moving folks around in preparation of Lorenzo's planned retirement. And then
is he gonna have a party too?
I doubt it. I highly doubt Lorenzo will have a party. I'd be very surprised.
And it wouldn't be at the Bucker, right?
Yeah, well,
No, there's no way it's in Schenectady.
yeah, no way.
On the harbor. That's a, yeah.
Sorry about that.
So no, stay tuned for the party for Lorenzo on the harbor. So,
Flotilla.
you know, if so, for permits, the new permit engineer contact is Wyatt Martin. He's on the website now, so please direct all your permit requests in his direction. And then reiterating what Jacob said, please start updating your TIP project costs or reality of keeping it if priorities have changed. And then for 787 tonight, we will be from 4 to 6 p.m. at the First Church on North Pearl Street. So come on down, say hi to me, tell your friends to come out and see us. It's part of our ongoing road show to keep gathering public input. Next week on Wednesday, we'll be at Arbor Hill Elementary School in the evening. So again, same part of the road show, and we'll also be neighbors with Sandy at Latin Fest. So we'll have a booth at Latin Fest as well.
Great.
So that's enough.
Greg, on Thruway Authority, do we have anybody?
Not today.
Not today, no Thruway. Albany County Airport, Connor's not,
Connor has left the virtual hall.
okay. Port,
Leaves you with me.
we have our suitless Pat.
Yeah, that's right. I'll be a little more relaxed. Rail project, I've been talking about for a while, is done when it's leading from the, basically Schenectady direction that'll allow the bigger, heavier GE components to get into our big lift warehouse for long-term storage and to get out onto the terminal. That was all part of our Tiger grant, which started only a couple years after I think it was maybe 6-7 years ago. It's our $50 million sort of facilities total upgrade. That was the last piece of that. The new bridge that we're building from Beacon Island, which is our offshore wind site, into the main district. Just looking at my notes here. Engineer saying 65% done. Foundations and primary steel are installed, which was pretty cool to see. And bridge deck, concrete curbing, all that kind of stuff will be coming before the fall. This should be completed. So I think tentatively in the next 2 months, we will have a bridge that can carry stuff that nothing in the east coast of the United States can carry. 5 to 6 times what a DOT bridge would allow. 6,000 pounds, I think it's gonna need 6,000 pounds per square foot. Which is what, when we build our new wharf, that will have to be, because the pieces falls in the line. That's how big those will be. From the end of that bridge until, well, it's about a mile away, which gets you to kind of where Cargill, the giant grain silos are. It's about a mile to there. That paving project is going on. They've got a binder course down now, and they're working on fixing or replacing or removing all of the railroad crossings in between. Removing, just picturing, so if you come into the port from Port Road, like off of Pearl Street, you have to cross 2 mainline CSX lines. There's no way around that. Those will always be there. But then when you're in, if you take a left to get by my office and then back out the other way, there's not more than 9 tracks, but 9 crossings. So we have to tell our neighbors or anybody in the city why businesses that are in the port, sort of, or might be south of the port, but on the peninsula, why they go on to Pearl. It's because if you got a fuel truck, you gotta stop 9 times, full stop. You got a bus 9 times, put out your stop sign. So we're moving 2 of those. We moved another one a year ago, bits and pieces, reduced by 20%. And then when those get removed and the rest get fixed, and the final course, this is a full bore repavement, down to 3 feet down. So that will be a very nice change from what it looks like now. So we're hoping that will keep at least cars, maybe not with some trucks in the district, and then on to 787 directly. So that should make, hopefully, at least it shows the neighbors what we're trying to do, and hopefully alleviate some of the spill out that we do get into the neighborhoods. So that should be done, I think, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That'll be a wonderful change for even us that work there. So that's it. Thank you.
Upcoming meetings, events, people take note. Human Services Transportation Advisory Committee, August 5th. Regional Ops and Safety Ad Committee, August 15th. Trade Advisory, August 21. Policy Board, September.
Yep, and I'm sure you all heard the news that Carbasile is retiring. I expect him to still be around for the September policy board meeting. There's a national search going on for his replacement, but he's been our vice chair and involved with us for well over 15 years, his role as CEO, but even prior to that, his other roles with CTA, so. He will be missed.
We have a kind of meeting in August.
We are going to have a committee meeting in August, we do have action items already. Sorry.
All right, motion to adjourn? Motion moved. Favor? Aye. Opposed, see, thanks for coming.